Messiah. My students almost all think that the Jewish Messiah was supposed to be a god. He was supposed to be God on earth. That is not what any Jewish thinker thought about the Messiah. The Jewish Messiah was not a divine figure. The Jewish Messiah was a human figure. The word Messiah simply means anointed one. The anointed one was the one that God had chosen to mediate his will on earth. The king of Israel was called God's anointed one. Israel no longer had a king who was the anointed one. Israel hadn't had a king for 600 years. There were no kings in Israel since the year 586 BCE. Well, some Jews thought God was going to bring about a kingdom where there'd be a king, and the king would be a human. The king would be the anointed one, and that's what they called the Messiah. The Messiah was the future king of Israel. That's what the Messiah was for Jews. So, did Jesus think that he was the human Messiah? So I just told you the common understanding of the Messiah, Jesus' view of himself. My view is that Jesus thought he was the Messiah. But what did he mean by it? The Jewish expectation of the Messiah was that there'd be a future king who would rule the people of Israel. Did Jesus think that he would be the future king to rule the people of Israel? I think the answer is yes. Here's why. I'll give you the short version of it. There is one saying of Jesus, there are a bunch of sayings of Jesus in the Gospels I think he really said, but here's one of them. This is one of the sayings of Jesus that I think Jesus absolutely must have said. There's a saying in the Gospels where Jesus is talking to the 12 disciples, and he tells them that when the kingdom of God comes, you 12 will be seated on 12 thrones ruling the tribes of Israel. You will be rulers in the kingdom, the 12 of you. Okay, why do I think Jesus said that? The reason I'm sure that somebody didn't make that saying up after Jesus' death, the reason I'm sure that Jesus himself said it, is because Jesus says this to all 12 disciples, one of whom was Judas Iscariot. No later Christian would make up the idea that Judas Iscariot is going to be the ruler in the kingdom of God. A Christian wouldn't have made up that saying, which means that it must go back to Jesus. Jesus really said that to his disciples. Okay, what does that have to do with Jesus being the Messiah? If the 12 disciples are going to be rulers in the kingdom, who's going to rule them? Jesus is the one who called them. Jesus is their master now. Jesus is their Lord now. Who's going to be their master then? Jesus is going to be their master then. They're going to rule the 12 tribes, and he's going to be the ruler. Jesus is going to be the Messiah. I have one other reason for thinking this. Jesus was almost certainly executed for calling himself the King of the Jews. Jesus does not go around in his public ministry saying, I am the King of the Jews. He doesn't go around saying, I am the Messiah. But when he's put on trial before Pontius Pilate in the Gospels, what does Pilate ask him? He asks him, are you the King of the Jews? What would make him ask him that? Jesus isn't going around saying, I'm the King of the Jews. Why would he ask him that? And when Jesus is crucified, there's a placard over his head saying, this is the King of the Jews. Why would that be the charge? There's no doubt that was the charge. It's in all of the Gospels, in all of the sources of the Gospels. This is what Jesus was killed for calling himself the King of the Jews. Why would Pilate think that? I'll tell you why I think Pilate thought that. I think Jesus did not publicly go around telling people, oh yeah, I'm your future king. But he did tell the 12 disciples that you 12 will be rulers. He must have taught them about what's going to happen in the kingdom when he would be installed as king. What did Judas betray? I don't think Judas betrayed simply where Jesus could be found in private. I think Judas spilled the beans. Jesus had been teaching his disciples that he would be the ruler and they would rule under him, and Judas went to the authorities and told them. And that's why Pilate knew that Jesus was calling himself the King of the Jews. And when he accused Jesus of it at his trial, Jesus couldn't very well say no, because he thought he was the future King of the Jews. And so they killed him for it. It makes sense of everything. It makes sense of Jesus' teaching. It makes sense of Judas's betrayal. It makes sense of Jesus' execution. Jesus thought of himself as the Messiah. Did he think of himself as the crucified Messiah? I don't think so. I don't think Jesus was planning to die. I think Jesus expected that the Son of Man was going to arrive and he would be installed as king. Because of that belief, he ended up getting crucified. And the disciples afterward started developing the idea that the Messiah had to be crucified, that the Messiah had to suffer. And that was the beginning of Christianity. That's where I'm going to pick up next time. Thank you.